In 2011, a median home in Ada County cost around $170,000. Today, that same median sits over $500,000. Nothing else about Idaho has changed that fast. Not the weather, not the wages, not the drive across the Treasure Valley. That one number explains almost everything that follows. On an average day right now, the state gains a few dozen more residents than it loses. Net inflow, day after day, quietly settling into a state of under 2 million. A large share of those residents are brand new in the past decade. That is roughly 1 in 4 of your neighbors who could not have pointed to Idaho on a map 10 years ago. This is a video about what it is actually like to live in Idaho right now. Not what it looks like from above, not what it costs to visit, what it costs to stay. Who can afford it? Who is quietly leaving? And why the Idaho that drew so many people here is no longer quite the Idaho they arrived to find. Because here is the part the housing numbers point to. Most of the people moving in are conservative. They are coming for low taxes, open land, a government that mostly leaves them alone, and a culture they recognize. Those are the exact things they say they want to protect. And those are the exact things their arrival is eroding. A born and raised Boise realtor puts the math plainly. People who grew up here, whose families have been here for generations, cannot afford to buy a home in their own hometown. Their kids cannot afford to stay. She does not call that an inconvenience. She calls it a generational loss. A 7th-generation Idahoan in his early 30s describes the median income to median housing price ratio in the Treasure Valley as among the worst in the country. Not among the worst in the West, among the worst in the country. And Idaho still pays the federal minimum wage, $7.25 an hour, unchanged since 2009. The wage floor has not moved in 15 years, while the price of a house has roughly tripled. So who is doing well in this gap? Mostly people who brought their salary with them. Remote workers keeping Seattle, Bay Area, or Portland pay while spending it against Idaho prices. Tradespeople with more work than they can take. Entrepreneurs taking advantage of low taxes and easy licensing. If your paycheck was set somewhere else, Idaho still feels like a bargain. If your paycheck is set here, the math has quietly turned against you. And it is not just locals feeling the squeeze. One California-based commenter, retired, watched a dozen of his former coworkers move to Idaho over the past decade. Out of 12, only 2 remain. 10 quietly went home. He himself still owns a ranch in Kamaya and cannot bring himself to relocate because his wife's healthcare would mean being flown to Seattle and waiting 72 hours or more for a bed. We will come back to those 10. The reasons they left are not what most relocation videos will tell you. There are other quiet contradictions waiting in this story. A canyon along the Oregon border, deeper than the Grand Canyon that almost nobody visits. A winter in Boise that can mean many days without a visible sun, wood smoke and car exhaust trapped at street level. A born and raised realtor saying plainly that some of the people leaving Idaho right now are the ones who made this place worth moving to in the first place. For now, hold on to that one number, roughly 300%. That is how much the median home price in Ada County has climbed in about a decade. Compare it to a federal minimum wage that has not moved at all. Compare it to a tipped wage that can legally start at $3.35 an hour. Compare it to a service industry holding up the restaurants, the hotels, the coffee shops that newcomers love. You can hear the resentment in the bumper stickers. Don't California my Idaho. You see it on trucks, in coffee shops, taped to gas pumps. It is a real sentiment, and it runs deep. It is also tangled. Because the growth those locals resent is the same growth fueling the economy, the jobs, the property values their own retirements depend on. You cannot fully welcome the price appreciation and fully reject the people driving it. That is the Idaho paradox, and it sits underneath every practical question that comes next. The Zillow price is just the start. Once you close on a house here, the real bill arrives in the mail over the following months, in forms most relocators have never seen before. Idaho reassesses property taxes every single year at current market value. Yes, the state has a 3% cap, but that cap applies to the taxing district's total budget, not to your individual bill. If your specific neighborhood gets hot, your personal tax bill climbs with it, uncapped. One Boise homeowner described their mortgage payment going up almost $200 a month, not because their loan changed, but because the county had reassessed the house. If you are coming from California, where Proposition 13 locks in your rate, this is a different game entirely. On the income side, Idaho runs a flat state income tax in the high 5% range and a 6% sales tax that applies to groceries, though the state issues a partial grocery credit at tax time. The total tax bite is lower than California's, but not by as much as the relocation pitch suggests once you stack property reassessments on top. The number on the closing disclosure is not the number you will live with. Then there is renting, which a lot of newcomers assume will be the soft landing. In Sandpoint, by one resident's account, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment runs around $2,000 a month, and local wages do not come close to supporting that. Which brings us to the wage floor. Idaho is a right-to-work state, and the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. If you work for tips, your employer can legally pay you $3.35 an hour, as long as your tips bring you up to minimum wage. Servers, bartenders, baristas, the people staffing the restaurants and coffee shops that newcomers love, they are absorbing the cost of this growth in the most direct way possible. If the math is starting to land for you, a quick like helps this video reach the people quietly running the same numbers right now. Because here is where the Zillow price really stops being the whole picture. If you are shopping outside the main metro, anywhere out toward Emmett, in rural Kuna, Star, or up in the Panhandle, you are very likely not on city water or sewer. You are on a private well and septic. In the Treasure Valley, drilling a well can run anywhere from $20,000 to $80,000, depending on depth and location. Title insurance typically does not cover that. Septic systems need inspections and pumping on a schedule, and in Idaho, water rights are legally separate from land ownership. The creek running through your backyard does not automatically mean you can use it. A lot of Treasure Valley homes also come with pressurized irrigation, a separate water system run by your local irrigation district just for your yard. It shows up as its own bill. You pay it whether you use the system or not. Then there is how you heat the house. Outside the main natural gas service areas, your options are propane, wood, or electric. None of them are cheap, and Idaho winters are real. Your first one will be the most expensive. Snow tires. Possibly a snowblower, possibly a plow if your driveway is long, and a heating bill that a Pacific Northwest transplant is not always braced for. Groceries in the Treasure Valley run roughly in line with the national average if you stick to Winco or Albertsons. Head into the smaller mountain towns, or up to Sandpoint and Stanley, and you should expect a noticeable markup on anything that had to be trucked in. Even your car costs more to keep clean. Between mud season and winter road grime, a $20 a month car wash membership is basically standard equipment. So who actually is doing well in this math? The clearest winners are remote workers who kept their Seattle, Bay Area, or Portland salary and brought it to an Idaho cost of living. though even that gap is narrowing. Tradespeople come next: electricians, plumbers, HVAC techs. Demand is heavy, and a licensed tradesperson here can write their own schedule. Entrepreneurs follow close behind, because Idaho makes it genuinely easy to start a business. Low taxes, light licensing, minimal red tape. The Treasure Valley does have real employers anchoring the wage map. Micron Technology is the most cited, the tech spine of the region, though that same realtor will tell you the local tech sector has been less certain since the pandemic and the rise of AI. St. Luke's and St. Alphonsus make healthcare the other major employer. Twin Falls runs on agribusiness, food production, processing, research. Idaho Falls offers some of the lowest utility rates in the country, anchored by the Idaho National Laboratory on the nuclear research side. For everyone else, the working assumption among locals is that you will probably need to hold down 2 jobs to make a local wage cover a local mortgage. The mental map of where to actually land, if your job allows flexibility, sorts itself fairly cleanly. Boise and Meridian are the safer starting points for newcomers who want airport access, a real hospital network, and a job market with more than one industry holding it up. Nampa and Caldwell are the working-class practical option. Cheaper, still in the valley, but with a 4-day school week to plan around. Idaho Falls and Pocatello, with cheap power and steady federal lab and university paychecks, lean retirement-friendly and family-friendly if you can live with the LDS-anchored social fabric. Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint are scenic and increasingly expensive, with the politics we will come back to. Sun Valley and Ketchum are the lifestyle towns where the wage-to-rent math is simply broken for anyone working a local job. And the remote Panhandle hollows and the small towns deep in central Idaho are the places where the fantasy and the reality drift furthest apart. What ties all of this together is that ratio of median income to median home price in the Treasure Valley, by one local account, among the worst in the country. The dollars going out and the dollars coming in are no longer in the same conversation for anyone earning a local wage. That brings up the bigger question that any honest relocation tour has to answer. What is actually here? What does the landscape do for the people who live in it? Because one of the deepest canyons in North America sits a few hours west of Boise, and almost nobody comes. Hell's Canyon drops nearly 8,000 feet from rim to river along the Idaho-Oregon border. That is deeper than the Grand Canyon. And on most days, you can stand on a ridge above the Snake River and not see another person. For a relocator, that is not just a piece of trivia. It is a fact about the Idaho economy. Arizona built an entire industry around its canyon. Flights, hotels, helicopter tours, a Grand Canyon village with a zip code. Hell's Canyon got jet boat trips, a couple of small outfitters, and a long road in. One of the deepest gorges on the continent has barely been monetized. For locals, that means clean water, empty trails, and the kind of fishing and rafting people elsewhere drive 1,000 miles for. It also means the towns around it, Riggins, Whitebird, the small communities along the Salmon, never got the resort money. The wages stay low. The houses stay, by Idaho standards, affordable. Drive south to Twin Falls, and you get the opposite version of the same story. Shoshone Falls drops more than 200 feet over a wall of black basalt nearly 1,000 feet wide. In a heavy snowmelt year, the roar carries a long way, and the mist throws permanent rainbows across the canyon. And then, some years, the water mostly disappears. Irrigation districts upstream divert the Snake to feed the dairies and potato fields that built the Magic Valley. By one account, in 1905, the falls ran completely dry. That is the practical reality of southern Idaho in a single image. The Niagara of the West is partly governed by farm demand. If you are moving to Twin Falls for the agribusiness jobs, food processing, dairy, seed research, that diversion system is also what pays your mortgage. Right next to the falls is the Perrine Bridge, nearly 500 feet above the Snake River. It is one of the only bridges in the United States where you can base jump without a permit. On a normal weekday afternoon, you will see parachutes opening below the bridge deck while traffic crosses overhead. That tells you what kind of state you have moved to. One where the default answer to, "Can I do that?" is usually yes, and the responsibility for the consequences lands squarely on you. Quick question while you are here, because the answer actually shapes where people end up living. Which of these landmarks would pull you toward a specific town? The canyon, the falls, the ski mountain, or the sawtooths? The map of where transplants settle tracks that answer more than people realize. Drive northeast from Twin Falls and you hit Craters of the Moon. Hundreds of square miles of basalt, some of it only a couple thousand years old. NASA brought the Apollo astronauts here in 1969 to practice lunar geology. For a resident of Arco or the small towns east of it, the monument is a Saturday afternoon, not a bucket list trip. It is also part of why this corner of Idaho stays cheap. Land that looks like the moon does not get bid up by second home buyers. Then the landscape changes completely. The Sawtooth Range rises out of central Idaho, with dozens of peaks above 10,000 feet and hundreds of glacial alpine lakes folded between them. Redfish Lake at the base is famously clear. Ernest Hemingway used this country as a retreat and is buried just down the valley in Ketchum. That cultural weight matters because Ketchum sits at the foot of Bald Mountain, the ski hill at Sun Valley. And Sun Valley is where Idaho's affordability story breaks completely. Union Pacific built it in 1936 as one of America's first destination ski resorts. Bald Mountain offers serious vertical, the town gets a remarkable share of sunny days, and the airport in Haley handles private jets the way Boise handles minivans. A single-family home in Ketchum routinely lists at multiples of what the same square footage costs in Boise. The teachers, the ski patrollers, the line cooks, the nurses, most of them do not live in Ketchum. They commute up from Haley or Bellevue, sometimes from further down the valley, on a two-lane highway that becomes its own bottleneck in winter. This is what luxury resort proximity does to a local housing market. It does not just raise the top, it hollows out the middle. The grocery store still needs cashiers. The clinic still needs medical assistants. But the people who fill those jobs increasingly cannot live near the jobs. If you are moving to the Wood River Valley for the skiing and the trails, understand that you are moving into a labor market shaped by people whose income has nothing to do with the local economy. The workaround for outdoor-oriented relocators who cannot buy into Sun Valley is the public land itself. The hundreds of alpine lakes, the wilderness trailheads, the hot springs along the Salmon River, the Frank Church Wilderness behind it. All of that is federal, open to anyone with a tank of gas and a permit where required. A resident of Stanley, a tiny town in the high country, has the same access to that country as a homeowner in a Ketchum chalet. Live somewhere you can afford and drive to the country that is already yours. Idaho has 4 seasons, and then it has the seasons between the seasons that nobody puts in the brochure. The brochure shows you Redfish Lake in July and Bogus Basin in February. It does not show you the 8 weeks in between, when the snow gives up and your gravel driveway turns into a swamp. Mud season is a real thing here. The melt-off washes ruts into your driveway, sinks a skid steer in your backyard if you are not careful, and keeps your car perpetually dirty. Then comes summer. In Boise, the thermometer can swing from 0 in winter to over 100 in July. That born and raised local realtor calls the climate here entirely bipolar. 1 week you are shoveling. 6 weeks later, you are hiding indoors at noon because the air outside has weight. And then, right at the end of summer, the air changes again. The fires start. Sometimes they are Idaho fires. More often they are Oregon, California, or Central Idaho fires, and the smoke just rides the wind into the Treasure Valley Bowl and sits there. In bad years, schools cancel outdoor activities. The mountains disappear behind a gray lid. You learn to check the air quality index before you check the weather. This is one of 2 air quality seasons local doctors talk about. The other comes in winter. The Treasure Valley sits in a bowl, and in the coldest part of the year, cold air gets trapped at the bottom while warmer air sits on top like a lid. The inversion can last more than a week. Temperatures barely move between day and night. Car exhaust and wood smoke stack up at street level. A longtime Boise resident put it plainly: it can be rough for everyone, and really bad for anyone with breathing issues. The practical fix, for residents who can manage it, is to drive out of the bowl. Meridian and Nampa sit on flatter ground, and the inversion layer does not form there. Now, here is where the weather stops being abstract and starts costing you. The person priced into a $500,000 starter home on the western edge of the valley is driving Eagle Road to work. Eagle Road carries tens of thousands of vehicles a day. It is among the busiest non-interstate corridors in the state. In one recent stretch, it saw close to 2,000 crashes. They are installing variable speed limit signs because the situation has gotten that bad. And there is no relief valve. No alternate interstate, no light rail, no subway. One wreck on I-84, and the whole valley stops moving. The Boise Airport handles the basic domestic hubs, but for anything international, you are usually connecting through Salt Lake, Seattle, or Denver, and adding half a travel day on each end. Cell coverage is solid in the Treasure Valley and the bigger corridor towns, but it goes patchy fast once you get into the Sawtooths, the Frank Church, or the back roads of the Panhandle. Home internet is the bigger surprise. Fiber has reached chunks of Boise, Meridian, and Coeur d'Alene, but plenty of newer subdivisions on the edges are still served by one cable provider, and remote workers heading further out are increasingly leaning on Starlink as their actual primary connection. If your job depends on a video call, verify the address you are buying, not the city. So the math of the move shifts. The 15-minute Meridian to downtown commute that looked so appealing at 10 in the morning becomes 45 minutes at 5 on a Thursday. The $500,000 house came with a 45-minute commute and a stretch of days a year when the sky overhead is unbreathable. That is the full sentence the Zillow listing does not write. Now add kids to that picture. Boise School District and West Ada run a full 5-day week. Nampa recently switched to 4. As you move into more rural districts, 4-day weeks become common. Friday off sounds charming until you realize you work Fridays. Licensed daycare slots in the Treasure Valley are scarce and routinely run $1,200 to $1,500 a month per child, with waiting lists measured in months. The advice from people who have been through it: budget an extra $200 to $300 a month per child for club sports or private lessons, because the smaller school footprint means fewer extracurriculars built in. The school is not going to be your default childcare or your default athletic program. Plan accordingly. Then add healthcare. In the Treasure Valley, the major hospitals exist, and they are decent, but the specialists are booked weeks or months out. North Idaho residents often drive an hour to Spokane just to see somebody. For the heavy stuff, major surgery, cancer treatment, advanced specialists, you are likely looking at a 4.5-hour drive to Salt Lake City or a flight to Seattle. The practical advice from people on the ground is to get on specialist waiting lists before you arrive, not after. Find your doctor, transfer your records, establish care while you still have a mailing address somewhere else. By the time you need urgent help, it is too late to start that process. Crime, for context, is not the deal breaker some relocation pitches imply it is anywhere else. Idaho's violent crime rate sits below the national average, and most Treasure Valley neighborhoods feel safer than what coastal transplants are used to. The friction here is rarely physical safety. It is everything else. Put it all together, and the relocation math starts to look different than the listing photo suggested. The $500,000 house, the 45-minute commute on the one road that matters, the January inversion and the smoke window in August, the 4-day school week, the specialist who can see you in March. None of these things alone is a deal breaker. Together, they are the daily reality the brochure left out. Which raises the question almost everyone arrives without having answered. Do the people who already live here actually want you to bring all this with you? Idaho is conservative, but the conservatism arriving from California is not quite the same conservatism that was already here. That is the part most relocation videos skip, and it is the part that will shape your daily life more than any tax rate or housing comp. Start with the basic political math. Idaho went for Trump by wide margins in 2 consecutive elections. The governor is Republican. The legislature is Republican by wide margins. This is not a swing state that might tilt the other direction next cycle. The tax code, the gun laws, the land policy, the way the schools run, all of it rests on that foundation. If you are moving here from a blue state because the math finally works for you, the math works because of how the state has been governed. Now here is where it gets interesting. A 7th-generation Idahoan, born and raised in Boise, describes the incoming conservatism as something different from the older live and let live version his grandparents practiced. The new arrivals are louder, more ideological, more interested in importing a culture war than in keeping to themselves. That is the friction. Locals who grew up here voting Republican their whole lives are finding themselves out of step with newer Republicans who showed up 2 years ago. So when someone says Idaho is conservative, ask which Idaho they mean. The LDS influence is the second layer, and it matters more in some parts of the state than others. In southern and eastern Idaho, Idaho Falls, Rexburg, the smaller towns down the Snake River Plain, the church is woven into the political fabric. By one native account, the church shapes who gets elected, what schools teach, and what libraries are allowed to stock. If you are not Mormon and you settle in one of those towns, you can absolutely build a life there. But the social circles, the school board meetings, the unspoken rules of who knows whom, they run through the church. Boise feels different. Moscow feels different still. The further south and east you go, the more this matters. Then there is the practical reality of constitutional carry. Anyone over 18 who can legally own a firearm can carry it, openly or concealed, with no permit, no waiting period, no registration. Open carry at the grocery store is normal. Kids compete on school trap and skeet teams the way other states have track and field. Idaho is also a stand-your-ground state with castle doctrine, no legal duty to retreat. None of this is a debate here. If the sight of a handgun on someone's hip while you are buying eggs is going to bother you, you should know that now, not after you have signed a lease. The Panhandle is its own conversation. The scenery is stunning. The politics are sharper than anywhere else in the state. and the documented incidents are real. In Moscow, by one account, a Christian nationalist church has been quietly buying up properties and businesses for years, and locals maintain lists of which storefronts to avoid. Latah County around the university is described as a small blue island. Drive 60 miles north and the politics tighten considerably. Boise sits in a different category. Boise has a Basque cultural backbone, a real downtown, and a mayor that some conservative commenters openly resent for being too progressive. It is the place in Idaho where a person of color is most likely to find community. It is not San Francisco. It is not even Portland, but it functions. So what does integration actually look like? Idahoans are described as friendly but private. They will say hello, ask how you are, and wait for the answer. What they will not do is invite you into their inner circle quickly. The fastest paths in are the same ones that have always worked in small-town America. Volunteer for the fire department, work the county fair, show up at the high school football game, join a church if that is authentic to you, shop at the local hardware store instead of ordering from Amazon. The locals who resent newcomers do not resent them for arriving. They resent the ones who arrive, take what the state offers, and do not show up for any of it. Dating and friendships sort along the same lines. Outside Boise, Moscow, and the university towns, the dating pool is small, skews younger married and church-anchored, and the apps thin out quickly. Single transplants in their 30s and 40s consistently report that the path to a social circle runs through a recreational habit. Climbing, hunting, skiing, river running, not through bars or apps. Show up at the same trailhead enough Saturdays and you have friends. Stay home and you do not. Which raises the real question for anyone moving here from a coastal city. Can you actually afford to stay? And will the people who stay still want you here? Out of a dozen retirees who moved to Idaho in the past decade, only 2 remain. 10 of them came, looked around, and went home. That sentence is small and easy to miss, but it does most of the work this video has been building toward. Start with the one that ended the conversation before it began. The California commenter still owns a ranch in Kamaya. He cannot move to it. His wife's advanced health care would require flying her to Seattle, possibly with a 72-hour wait before treatment. He is not poor. He is not unwilling. The ranch is already his. The state's medical infrastructure simply cannot hold the weight of what his family needs. That is the loop that has been open since the beginning. And that is how it closes. Not with drama, with a man sitting in California next to a house he owns in Idaho. The pattern under the dozen retirees is the same pattern repeated. Property tax bills that reassessed at market value and kept climbing. Specialists booked 3 months out. Smoke season and winter inversions they had not budgeted for, lung-wise or air purifier-wise. A 4-day school week their grandkids' parents could not staff on Fridays. So who actually stays? Remote workers with the Seattle or Bay Area salary thrive, though that gap narrows each year. Tradespeople thrive. Electricians, plumbers, HVAC techs are in demand everywhere in this state. Business licensing is easy, taxes are low, and a competent entrepreneur can build something here in months that would take years in California. Outdoor people thrive. The ones who actually use the rivers and the mountains and the trailheads instead of just photographing them. 2 career households thrive in Boise and Meridian, where there is enough sector breadth, Micron, St. Luke's, St. Alphonsus, state government, the university, to land both partners in real jobs. Families with deep roots thrive. A 7th-generation Idahoan can tell you he and his wife sometimes think about leaving for somewhere bluer. Then, look at the land their families have been on for generations. And stay. Who struggles? Service workers on a $7.25 minimum wage trying to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in Sandpoint for $2,000 a month. That math does not work, and no amount of grit fixes it. Native Idahoans on local wages, watching their hometowns priced beyond them by transplants with coastal salaries. People with ongoing specialist care, cancer treatment, or any medicine that assumes a major hospital is 20 minutes away rather than 4.5 hours. Young single transplants who expected an urban dating scene and ended up in a town of a few thousand on a 4-day school week. People who need diversity, nightlife, or anonymity in any meaningful supply. Boise gives you a version of it, and nowhere else in the state really does. Before the close, one more practical note from the realtor who has watched the Treasure Valley change from the inside for her entire career. If you are buying outside the main metro, verify the well, the septic, the irrigation bill, and the water rights before you sign. Title insurance typically does not cover any of it. If this kind of grounded, numbers-first look at a state is what you came here for, subscribing keeps more of these in your feed as the channel works through the West. And if someone in your life is sitting on a Zillow tab open to a Boise listing right now, weighing whether to leave the coast, send them this before they close, not after. Here is the honest bottom line the title promised. The California dream that pulled so many people to Idaho is quietly pushing native Idahoans out of their own hometowns, and it is quietly pushing a lot of the transplants back out too, not because the state turned hostile, but because the numbers stopped working. If you are a remote worker with a coastal salary, a licensed tradesperson, an entrepreneur, or an outdoor family that does not need a major hospital 20 minutes away, Idaho can still pencil out. If you are on a local wage, if you depend on ongoing specialist care, or if you are counting on the school district to cover Fridays, get the property tax estimate, the well quote, the specialist wait time, and the school calendar in writing before you sell the house you already own.